presence of Honorable E.P. Chetwood, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Immigration and Trade. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, thank you, Madam Speaker. Technology, we can't do with it, we can't do without it. Madam Speaker, I rise to address the bill before us entitled the Finance Variation of Appropriation Bill 2020. The distribution of funds to the selected ministries articulated in this bill is simply unconscionable. Madam Speaker, we are currently faced with a situation that has not been seen since the Spanish flu. COVID-19 has taught us that we must reset our thinking and our approach, and most definitely how we manage our finances. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed business and life as we know it. Tourism was one of the first sectors to be impacted and continues to be one of the sectors hardest hit by the coronavirus pandemic. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, now estimates that the international tourism will fall by around 80% in 2020. Madam Speaker, the unprecedented shock to the tourism economy is being intensified by the evolving sanitary situation, with the sector potentially facing stop-start cycles for some time. Despite the proven resilience of the tourism economy to previous shocks, the combined economic and health nature of this crisis means that the road to recovery is extraordinarily uncertain and likely to take some years. Madam Speaker, with this uncertainty in mind, I cannot understand why the government would distribute the most funds, totaling a little more than $42 million, to the Ministry of Tourism. The Ministry of Health is more than deserving of the highest allocation of funds, especially when we are faced with a pandemic that requires us to be extra vigilant with the decisions that we make in this honorable House. Madam Speaker, if the Ministry of Health had the we could have provided the salary enhancement to frontline workers promised by the government as published in the Observer. Grant. Yes, I will agree that there are other ministries warranting an increase in funding, but the prioritization displayed by the government in this bill cannot be equitably justified. My dear colleagues, in gender-responsive budgeting, we must adequately assess the impact that resource allocation will have. Low recognition of the importance of the Ministry of Social Transformation, as they are allocated the least amount, the sum of $3,134,098. I am even more concerned about the social sector's weak planning capacity regarding the inefficient use and unavailability of timely and proper statistics for decision-making. Madam Speaker, an Economic Commission for Latin America and Caribbean workshop in 2000 states, and I quote, "Generally, the Caribbean countries have been described as data poor, and the absence of data and information, policies adopted and implemented have been arrived at on the basis of little or no data and less information. The result is years of wandering in the wilderness of development, talking of visions of the promised land of development without the ability to measure proximity to that goal." Madam Speaker, 17 years later, the data problem repeats itself. How can we formulate effective policies if we do not have accurate and timely data on the scale, nature, and complexity of the problem? How do we know that the targeted interventions to grow premature sectors of our economies are working, and if we have enough data to conduct a proper impact assessment? In many cases, as pointed out in the quote above, Madam Speaker, we are making policies, decisions, and formulating plans in the dark. Madam Speaker, sections of the Antigua State College and the Minoa Magnet Primary School, Island Academy, St. Nicholas, and St. Andrews had to be quarantined due to the COVID-19 infection. And the members of the government side are asking us to support a bill to be in a COVID-19 pandemic environment, then the ministerial officials would not be forced to disseminate inaccurate information about the preparedness of our schools to reopen, knowing good and well that wasn't the case. Madam Speaker, doesn't the government know that we too have constituents to report to? Parts of families, constituents who will be significantly affected if this bill is passed and measures are improperly implemented. Madam Speaker, how does the Minister of Parliament with responsibility for finance cope knowing that if this bill passes, many Antiguans and Barbudans will be significantly affected by the reallocation of funds to the ministries that do not need at this immediate instance under this current situation? Well, I will not be part of it, Madam Speaker. We on the opposition side refuse to support a bill that has not been thoroughly analyzed. So my fellow parliamentary representatives on the other side, go back to PAC, reset, rethink, get it right. Create a bill that takes everyone into consideration in this fair land of ours. Carefully analyze the ministries that require reallocation of funds and those that can bear the impact of having funds removed from their expendable resource. It's not about us, Madam Speaker. It's about the nation of Antigua and Barbuda. It's about the survival of every citizen as we continue to grapple with the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's about the women and men who are single parents and the women trying to elevate themselves by living in a male-dominated society. It's about the students who live in fear of what may happen in the pandemic while they try to get an education. It's about the homeless, Madam Speaker. It's about our senior citizens. It's about the families who don't know where their next meals are coming from. It's about the survival of everyone who calls this beautiful land home. Madam Speaker, having studied the bill, our recommendation is that it be sent back to the legislative drafters for further review. We can do better, Madam Speaker, and we certainly must. Thank you.
I acknowledge the honourable member for St. Philip's North. Honourable member? Yes, ma'am? Honourable members for St. Philip's North, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I pass it over to the honourable member of St. Mary's North.
Honourable member, you may go ahead.
Madam Speaker, I stand here in the Honourable House in full support of the Finance Variation Appropriation Bill 2020. Let me start by saying all ministries are important and in need of continuous development. However, it is in my deepest belief that the proposing ministries are well deserving of their monetary increase. Our healthcare systems are profoundly lacking basic qualities and standards that are needed for the betterment of our country. Madam Speaker, I stand as the representative of St. Mary's North, and I'm also the Minister of Health, Wellness, and the Environment. That means I don't only stand in the position of representing my constituents, but I stand in the position of representing everyone on this island. As I pulled an article up on CARICOM today about mental health, I came across a vital quote that I will now share. Good mental health is critical to the functioning of society at the best of times. It must be front and center of every country's response to and recovery from COVID-19 pandemic. The mental health and well-being of societies have been severely impacted by this crisis and are a priority to be addressed urgently. End of quote. Madam Speaker, during this detrimental time, we can clearly see that it is important for residents of Antigua and Barbuda mental health to be in a good state. Let me remind this Honourable House that mental health does not only affect a particular gender or a particular age. I would compare it to the common cold or a wound because it affects everyone regardless of age, race, and gender. With that being said, Madam Speaker, due to the loss of jobs, COVID-19, one cannot expect a mother who is living in poverty, mental health, to be in the same position as a mother who is living in a nuclear household when her husband still has his job. Moreover, we cannot expect a man who is living by himself with responsibilities such as bills to pay, mental health, to be in the same position as a man who's living with his parents with no responsibilities of paying bills. During these detrimental times, once again, it is important for residents of Antigua and Barbuda mental health to be treated with care, the highest quality of care. Madam Speaker, I refuse to live on this beautiful island, sit within this honorable house, and represent my people while they are deemed crazy. I will not tolerate it. As it relates to sexual and reproductive health, I would like to begin by shining a light on UNFPA technical brief. That is the United Nations Population Fund's technical brief, and I quote, "Emergency response of COVID-19 outbreak also means that resources for sexual and reproductive health services may be diverted to deal with the outbreak, contributing to a rise in maternal and newborn mortality, increased unmet need for contraceptions, and increased number of unsafe abortions and sexually transmitted infections." Madam Speaker, this quote speaks for itself. As the Minister of Health, Wellness, and the Environment, I refuse to accept a society of individuals who are constantly suffering in these areas and beyond. I also refuse to sit down and have the opposition speak about my Prime Minister, about the bill proposed that we shall not be putting monies into certain ministries. With that being said, Madam Speaker, opposition, I can only rightfully serve my people with an increased budget. With that being said, my full support is with the bill, if it pleases you, Madam Speaker.
I acknowledge the honorable member for St. John City South.
Madam Speaker, it's my great pleasure to be here today in support of the Finance Variation of Appropriation Bill 2020. The opposition need not to worry, as we propose that we can assure that this bill's intent is to strengthen our socio-economic development. In our national budgets, we, the government, propose national policies and budget activities with the assurance that these are in support of our nation's continuous growth and development for the benefit of all our citizens. But we recognize we need to ensure that these benefits are truly accessible for all. How do we ensure that there is a commitment to fairness, justice, and equality in the formulation of our public policies, distribution of our public services, and management of all our institutions serving the public? What I'm saying here, Madam Speaker, is that we, the government, identify that there is a need of equity in order for our national benefits to strive to attain to reach all. As such, we in the Ministry of Legal Affairs, Public Safety, and Labor are in full support of gender-responsive budgeting. This outlook on the formulation of budgets to create a direct linkage between social and economic policies, applying a gender analysis to the formulation and implementation of our budgets is needed. Our ministries can be able to reflect gender equity within the distribution of public service and expenditures. Madam Speaker, I will not ignore the strides that Antigua and Barbuda has made towards achieving gender equity. Within my ministry, We have advanced the rights of women. We're working with advancing legislation and national strategies. However, I can admit that our focus has solely been on gender-based violence. And it's here today, our government is saying that we have done the work, but there's much more still to be done. Therefore, this step of involving gender-responsive budgeting can help us have an intersectional and multifaceted approach to end discrimination against women, getting measures for women on equal opportunities in all areas of social and economic life where gender balance is lacking. The opposition has highlighted their reservations towards the proposal of redistribution of resources among our ministries to achieve our gender equity priorities. But, Madam Speaker, what we need to understand is that no progress or accomplishment can be attained without sacrifice. So, as I hate to see the reduction of funds within my ministry, I understand that there's a greater goal at hand. We are facing an unprecedented times, and we have to adjust how we look at the budget. I understand where we are currently facing a global pandemic, one which no one could have prepared for. As such, we need to shift our resources to strengthening our healthcare system, as highlighted as one of our major priorities in this bill. I understand that gender-based violence is still a major issue within our nation. As such, we will continue to push the efforts to see an end of this abuse. I understand that we are facing I understand that we will be facing an economic recession, one that we have never experienced before. As such, we are pushing to provide greater avenues of most importantly, to improve the economic resiliency by facilitating greater access for all our women-owned business to export markets. Madam Speaker, what I'm saying here today is that 2020 has been quite a year. But we, with this bill, believe that this can be the step towards the path of recovery, towards sustainability, towards affluence, so that our great nation can be the one that recovers from this pandemic with success. Thank you.
I acknowledge the honorable member for St. Paul. Oh, sorry. I acknowledge the honorable member for St. George.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I rise to make my contribution known to the House on the Finance Variation of Appropriation Bill 2020. I agree with the section of the bill which reallocates funds out of the Ministry of Information, Broadcasting, Telecommunications, Science and Technology into my ministry, Ministry of Social Transformation, Human Resource Development, Youth and Gender Affairs. Honorable members of this House, I wish to focus on how unemployment of our women because of the pandemic has presented itself as a catalyst for gender-based violence. As of September 19, 2019, the International Labour Organization, also known as the ILO, released an article that stated, in the region's average unemployment rate, which was 8.1%, could rise between 4 and 5 percentage points. Even so, the Deputy General Secretary of the Antigua and Barbuda's Workers' Union told our local newspaper that between now and January 2021, we can look forward to a dramatic increase in unemployment rate in Antigua and Barbuda. What does this mean for our nation's women? A charity organization called Save Lives, who are dedicated to rescuing victims of domestic violence, have recorded that women, even so, women who make less than $10,000 are significantly more likely to be victims of domestic abuse. Domestic violence has held too many women captive, whether through physical abuse, financial abuse, emotional abuse, or a mixture of all three. A lot of these women in domestic violence situations
cannot provide for themselves and or their families and depend on their abusers who may be making more and offer financial stability, and it is our duty to help them to return to a state of financial stability independently. Some of the initiatives that this increase in budget can be geared towards are skill development workshops, grants, food stamps that will supplement low-income households. Skill development workshops will allow these women to develop new and useful skills, develop work ethic, and assist in getting them employed so that they can maintain themselves and their families. These workshops won't end at just making these women employable, but it is meant to guide them through to the application process and ensuring that they become employed and stay employed. These workshops will offer to the women how to be technologically competent, if needed, numeracy and literacy skills, transcription skills, and skills pertaining to the hospitality industry, just to name a few, whilst offering counseling. The implementation of food stamps to supplement low-income households will allow for the reallocation of money from the female breadwinner's income from food into other family needs, including savings. Another initiative is the implementation of grants to allow women who have learning and physical disabilities to be able to be provided for. Honorable members of this House, we are doing our people a justice, even more so our women, by ensuring that the funds that they have entrusted us is being managed in a way that will benefit them. Think about the women who are facing gender-based violence, the hundreds of women who want to get out of the situations of domestic abuse, but cannot because they don't have these access to these programs. They don't get these opportunities and won't be able to go free from financial abuse, physical abuse, and emotional abuse. These are wholesome alternatives, and I cannot see why my colleagues can possibly oppose to this reallocation of funds for the betterment of our people, and more so for the betterment of our women. I thank you.
I acknowledge the Honourable Member for St. John City East.
Madam Speaker, and my fellow members of the House, I stand before you representing the Ministry of Information, Broadcasting, Telecommunications, Science and Technology in the aims of collaborating with the Ministry of Social Transformation and Human Resource Development as funds are subsequently generated into creating a society enriched with gender parity, gender equity, and gender equality through gender-responsive budgeting. Madam Speaker, one of the main issues within our society is the jeopardizing prevalence of gender discrimination and a lack of equalitarianism within the working sector. According to the UN Women's ICT and Gender article, patriarchal, unequal societies thwart the potential of men and women alike. In this androcentric system, differentiating between men and women has become second nature, relegating women to a position of subordination and discrimination and wasting the enormous potential of about half of the world's population. Furthermore, worldwide, less than 1 in 5 members of Parliament is a woman. Women's participation in the workforce has estimated at 52.6% in 2008, while that of men stood at 77.5%. Madam Speaker, there is a clear need for women to have access to technological facilities for educational purposes, jobs, financial advice, and skill training. Additionally, the internet, being one of our greatest enablers, creates opportunities for female entrepreneurs. In these unprecedented times and the reduction in available employment, entering the global market is a profitable way to stay afloat. ICT offers opportunities to promote business regardless of size, location, and produce. Madam Speaker, may it be known that approximately 1 in 3 women in the Caribbean will experience domestic or intimate partner violence in their lifetime. These numbers are expected to be an interest to the public at large, and it's crucial that every level of the society is able to comprehend matters dealing with law, governance, and regulations. Being informed evokes change, resulting in a vocal society that stands up against injustice when they see it. Think about a young lady who was sexually assaulted and was unaware of the service offered by the Directorate of Gender Affairs, who provides a doctor, examination, and counseling for the victim, and furthermore, an investigation into the matter. Women and girls are on average at a higher risk of intimate partner violence and other forms of domestic violence as the result of the COVID-19 pandemic due to increased household tensions. Programs and initiatives such as this is valuable in combating societal pressures, domestic abuse, and gender-based violence, thus creating a peaceful and economically enriched society. As it pertains to the sustenance of health within our society, the novel coronavirus has infected approximately 57 million individuals, is climbing as we speak, and has taken the lives of over 1.3 million. Within Antigua, we currently sit at 139 total cases, which represents 0.14% of our local population. Our people are aware of the mandatory wearing of face masks, the gathering of 25 persons or less, whilst maintaining a safe distance, and a safe hour at which they ought to be within their homes because of technological communication, radio and television, and the media. It has become the prime factor in the governance of our society and will remain this way until the hopeful eradication of this virus. Furthermore, on an international scale, the strain on the healthcare system is an insurmountable impact on our economies and societies. As frontline responders, community volunteers, and caregivers, women are at an increased risk of becoming infected and are receiving less access to sexual and reproductive health care. There will then be a need for equipment, technological resources, and facilities within clinics and homes, and adequate information on how women can safeguard themselves and their health. Additionally, the toll taken on mental health is to be prioritized, and persons are required to be informed of mediatory services and counseling that are offered. Madam Speaker, quite frankly, I cannot see any way our opposition can even oppose to the proposal of this bill. Moreover, as it pertains to one of our most vital industries, education, we cannot limit or refuse to exhaust all our avenues and resources. Students at primary, secondary, and tertiary levels are able to carry out their educational responsibilities and are not deprived of access to tools that will assist them in further knowledge. However, students living in underprivileged communities and homes with inadequate access to internet and resources are left at an unwarranted and inequitable disadvantage. Women are currently less likely than men to use or own digital technologies, with gaps larger among youth and those over 45 years old. ICT improves efficiency, enhances coordination, and improves the quality of information gathered and shared for development planning. The collaboration with the Ministry of Social Transformation will help our young women and men access the fundamentals to furthering their educational capabilities and become assets to the sustainability of the economy. The community computer access centers are to be considered essential places, as they serve now, more than ever, crucial areas of retrieval and gain. After all, Madam Speaker, an investment in our children is an investment in our future. We have adjusted our education system and our work-life interests towards dependency on a virtual platform. Social networking has become our new way of communication, our new normal. Our ministry informs to save and does so through the most popular mode of communication, the media. The Ministry of Social Transformation's initiative, paired with our committed ICT support, will give rise to a better society, economy, and nation. I thank you.
I acknowledge the honourable member for St. John's Rural North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Gender equality and the empowerment of women and their autonomy are arguably important catalysts for accelerating the achievement of sustainable development goals and multiplying their impacts in different spheres of life. In this context, economic empowerment of women has been identified as a prerequisite for sustainable development and a key factor in achieving gender equality with the ability to boost economies. Global Banking Alliance for Women. Equality, Madam Speaker, particularly gender equality, is an essential component of sustainable social progress, as it is at the very heart of human rights and one of the core values of the United Nations. It does not need justification. Yet, gender equality has multifaceted and positive implications for development in all its economic, social, and environmental dimensions, and can contribute significantly to economic growth. Ward et al. 2010. Therefore, promoting gender equality has the potential to foster sustainable development. Madam Speaker, the increased revenue of the Ministry of Tourism and Economic Development of $42,216,589 EC dollars is beneficial in increasing economic resiliency by, as mentioned by Attorney General, facilitating greater access for women-owned business to export markets, extending government grants and loan facilities to women-led small and micro enterprises, and increasing women's training and access to diverse fields. Allow me to expound in ways in which the aforementioned would be executed in Antigua and Barbuda. 1. By providing adequate training for women entrepreneurs, skills possessed by such women would be perfected, thus increasing the quality of the product or service they offer. As a result, earnings increase, allowing the women to feel more independent and confident. According to United Kingdom Department for International Development 2010, higher female earnings and bargaining power translate into great investment in children's education, health and nutrition, which leads to economic growth in the long term. Madam Speaker of the House, grants and loan facilities extended to small business owners owned by women will be used resourcefully to aid in possible business expansion as well as employment opportunities for workers. Thus, by creating the space for these two things to occur, production increases drastically, which means more goods for sale. These goods can now be exported to countries, resulting in the increased revenue for Antigua and Barbuda. Madam Speaker, to conclude, I approve the contents of the Finance Variation of Appropriation Bill 2020 in accordance with my colleagues. Thank you.
I acknowledge the Honourable Member for All Saints West.
Madam Speaker, I rise to give my contribution as the Minister of Education, Science and Technology on the bill so voraciously moved by our Honourable Prime Minister. Madam Speaker, of course, when we came here in January, none of us expected to face this global pandemic. So this is why we're here today to reallocate our funds in order to continue our shift of move towards gender-based funding. In the face of adversity, our government has no intention to fall short on our promise to shift our focus. We know that with an increased focus on applying the gender lens, a reallocation of resources will combat the issues faced today. Madam Speaker, the figures speak for themselves. The social transformation budget for 2020, as said earlier, is $28.6 million. While I reiterate my agreement with the proposed bill, I suggest keeping the Ministry of Education's $151.6 million budget, which means no further increase to the Ministry of Tourism from my ministry, but instead a collaborative effort with the other ministries. Maintaining the Ministry of Education's budget will undoubtedly be a move towards strengthening our public ethical standards. Madam Speaker, please allow me to expound on the importance of this. According to the European Economic Commission, our nation saw a 6.36% GDP per capita increase in 2019. Of course, this is a remarkable success. However, to continue our growth trend, we must ensure that we are molding the lives of our women today, giving us the support system through access of higher education, training, as well as entrepreneurial development. Investing into the social transformation specifically and maintaining my ministry's budget means no one can make outlandish claims when a woman successfully accepts them. Madam Speaker, very recently we were all witness to a distinguished male utter that there is no issue being faced with promoting women into leadership positions here in Antigua and Barbuda. The individual went on to saying, people just prefer men. He spoke on his accomplishments of defeating women in the position that he held. Madam Speaker, to my surprise, that same meeting was about the gender issues being faced today, but some of the women were shaking their head in agreement. This in itself shows why our women need to be educated. We need guidance. We need to be empowered, reminded of our value, our power, and our strength, and how significantly we contribute to society. A study out of Australia shows that though women are as skilled as men, 42% of women, compared to 31% of men aged 25 to 29 years of age, has a bachelor degree or above. Yet, we are less likely to be employed, promoted, or placed in positions we are qualified to hold. That is 65% of women compared to 78% of men. When we do work, we earn less. Women earn 18% or $4.10 less per hour for the same job, or $700,000 over a lifetime. I don't know about you, but I am not making $700,000 less. Let us bring it in even closer. A study was conducted across Latin America and the Caribbean by ECLAC. The time women dedicate to unpaid work is higher than the time spent by men on the same activities. This shows that despite the growing participation of women in the job market, there has not been a real compensation with a greater male participation in domestic and unpaid care work within households. In this sense, the overload of women working hours acts as an obstacle to an equal participation in the labor market, as well as to an access to economic resources that could, in fact, provide them more autonomy. Madam Speaker, today, we celebrate the first female Vice President of the United States, VP-elect Kamala Harris. Since the office was established in 1789, 46 men have served as president. After 231 broad years, this is the first time a man saw it fit to place a woman in that vice presidency position. It is rather worse that after so long, we have had no woman as the president. Madam Speaker, our women need to be educated.
Honorable member, you have a few seconds to wrap up.
Madam Speaker, if you could please allow me an additional 2 minutes.
I leave it to the House.
Thank you. It's a similar trend here in our nation. The previous House of Representatives, before we dominated, had a total of 18 members. Guess how many were women? 2. Clearly, this is a cause for concern. Madam Speaker, based on the Inter-Parliamentary Union statistics on women in Parliament, as of October 1st, 2020, Antigua and Barbuda currently sits in the 162nd place. We are the lowest ranked Caribbean island. St. Kitts and Nevis is all the way at 78. Grenada is at number 8. And though Dominica sits at number 38, they are second ranked position for the incredible growth trend of women in Parliament. We all need to be educated. In closing, Madam Speaker, women have proven time and time again that we are the backbone in the efficient operation of our nation. I implore you all to keep in mind that further investing into the Ministry of Social Transformation and maintaining the budget of the Ministry of Education will undoubtedly continue to increase our GDP per capita percentage, which will only contribute to economic growth. Yes, this economic powerhouse, we made a promise to our people, and that is the promise we will keep. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
I acknowledge the honorable member for St. John's Rural West.
Madam Speaker, I rise to give my contribution to this bill that is being debated in this honorable House, the Finance Variation of Appropriation Bill 2020. Madam Speaker, let me make it pellucid. I fully support the bill that is being tabled today. Once again, it is testimony that my government is looking at the needs of its people and finding ways to improve the lives of many for the greater good. What I am particularly impressed with, Madam Speaker, is that women are being placed at the fore in a time when gender parity is an essential recognized movement as we advance in a very progressive, democratic, yet male-dominated society. So this initiative must be complemented. I know that there are those who may think that there is an imbalance in the identification of ministries earmarked for the reallotment of funds, and their concerns may be warranted. Yes, there are other ministries that would be deserving in this time of COVID-19. However, there are times when we have to bite the bullet and take that first step. My government is committed to every citizen in this country. Every decision this government makes considers the needs of everyone. One clear intent that women are being prioritized. Let's look at tourism for a moment. This sector has a large female employment, which overwhelmingly contributes to the gross domestic product of this country. To acknowledge them and their needs is a turning point. Although there are those who have found alternative opportunities in the interim, there are many who are still suffering. The passing of this bill will help. Additionally, we must do what is necessary to reignite confidence in our tourism product. Yes, the COVID-19 pandemic is an unfortunate reality, but we cannot let it dampen our way of life. If we continue to adhere to every protocol stipulated by the medical and health officials, we are able to operate in a safe environment. Mandatory use of protective face masks and shields, personal sanitizers and sanitization, as well as social distance, must be paramount. So to those who contend that it is not justifiable to give over $72 million to these three earmarked ministries, I implore upon you to give this initial move a chance. Let things fall into place because it will benefit the masses. But you know, Antigua and Barbuda is not the first to embark on such strategy. Trinidad and Tobago was also bold enough to do so. Madam Speaker, we can make reference to the Trinidad and Tobago Gazette, Volume 56, Number 49, 10th May 2017. The House of Representatives tabled and passed a similar bill during the second session in the 11th Parliament sitting government's fiscal year. The bill sought to vary the appropriation of the sum, the issue of which was authorized by the Appropriation Financial Year 2017 Act, 2016 Act Number 9 of 2016, and sought to authorize the utilization of any sums occurring from a reduction in the expenditure under certain heads of expenditure for the purpose of meeting liability incurred through the increase in expenditure under other heads. Madam Speaker, $1,398,125,544 Trinidad and Tobago dollars was channeled from the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries to a slew of many other deserving ministries, some of which included education, health, agriculture, and national security. And furthermore, after perusing this bill, I was convinced that careful consideration was made as to the sectors to be defunded and those to receive additional funding. So after seeing this piece of legislation, it was clear to me that this bill will benefit the majority of Antiguans and Barbudans, especially our women. And furthermore, as we thrust to promote gender parity in this progressive society that we live in, moving to reallocate funds to deserving ministries where many women are employed and are able to demonstrate their aptitude in the field and clearly show that their productivity and capability is on par and often supersede that of their male counterparts can be seen as a pivotal move in the right direction. Through you, Madam Speaker, I wish to admonish my fellow colleagues on this side. In everything we do, let us continue to take the needs of every citizen into consideration. Flexibility must be entertained in order for us to achieve any semblance of ossification. So passing this bill will send a clear message to the opposition that arguments against this bill are vacuous and unfounded. Their arguments against this bill is simply grandstanding. Everyone will benefit because we are a caring government. So, Madam Speaker, and the members of this honorable House, I must thank you for affording me the opportunity to give my viewpoints on this bill. Truth to power is our mantra, and it must prevail. Not only will I remain committed to my constituents, but women will also be given priority, because they too are depending on us to be their voices in this honorable chamber. Madam Speaker, in conclusion, let me reiterate my full support of the bill, the finance variation of Appropriation Bill 2020, if it pleases you, Madam Speaker.
I acknowledge the honorable member for Barbuda.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Fellow members, on the motion to amend the national budget for 2020, it may be a surprise, but I do accept the finance variation of appropriation bill. This is based on two crucial factors of gender equity. One, to strengthen Barbuda's healthcare system, paying special attention to mental, sexual, and reproductive health. And two, to empower Barbudans in their access to and trade of goods. In 2017, Hurricane Irma devastated Barbuda, contributing to a death and the virtual destruction of the island. According to the World Bank 2017, the recovery needs amounted to $222 million US. Although there have been infrastructural improvements since then, the health and wellness of Barbudans are a huge concern. With the spread of COVID-19 in such a tight-knit community, the development of healthcare services is necessary. This bill, as it supports the Ministry of Health in transferring $26,915,032 from the Ministry of Legal Affairs, aims to, one, purchase life-saving medicine and hospital equipment, two, create a special fund to pay for COVID-19 vaccinations, and three, develop community-based health services, among other goals. Madam Speaker, the budget cut of the Attorney General's office greatly pales in comparison to the work that needs to be done in Barbuda. Madam Speaker, I am actually very grateful that the government has created a policy to empower women instead of leasing Barbudan land for measly amounts of cottages. Encouraging greater access to financing and training can create more space for women to enter the agriculture and fishing industry. And as women, we need to take up more space. This is particularly important where many plans, quote unquote, to develop Barbuda have threatened the communal ownership of our land. A prime example of that is the investment offered by Robert De Niro. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding my support of the bill, the commitment of the Ministry of Education in expanding the only secondary school in Barbuda is non-negotiable. Though the project was proposed in 2013 by the government, it is yet to be completed. Expansion is not only vital for young women, but for young men and other vulnerable groups. By this, an informed and well-socialized population can create local awareness of issues such as gender-based violence. In addition, my fellow members, in light of the cuts, we remain steadfast in protecting our communal land rights and advancing our efforts in independence. Madam Speaker, although I uphold the goals of the bill, it is on the basis that the government recognizes the concerns of Barbuda and not see us as a hated stepsister. Thank you.
I acknowledge the honorable member for St. Philip's North. Honorable member, your mic.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Opposition Leader, and my fellow colleagues, it is an honor to stand with my government in support of the finance variation of Appropriation Bill 2020. Madam Speaker, the bill seeks to provide resources to issues such as sexual, mental, and reproductive health. In addition, the bill seeks to bring an end to gender-based violence and increase economic resilience. Madam Speaker, the amendment of the bill will foster positive changes within Antigua and Barbuda, as it is geared to improve the lives of human beings, creating equality for all, and bridging the gaps between men and women in today's society. According to UNICEF, and I quote, "Gender equality means that women and men and girls and boys enjoy the same rights, opportunities, and protections." End of quote. Therefore, the amendment of the bill will allow for sustainable development to include the 5 Sustainable Development Goals. 1, to alleviate poverty. 2, to eliminate hunger. 3, to provide good education. 4, to provide good health and well-being. And 5, to foster gender equality. Madam Speaker, the funds should be allocated to the designated ministries that the bill addresses today. And I say this because of how important these ministries are within our society, as they play a major role in building the brand for our people, not only locally, regionally, and internationally as well. The Ministry of Health, Wellness, and the Environment will be able to continue its COVID-19 response and enhance the quality of women's health and mental health facilities. Let me remind the ones in the back who did not know. Health is wealth. And if we look at what is prevalent right now with the COVID-19 pandemic, you can see how many persons are affected where mental health is concerned. Again, Madam Speaker, health is wealth. However, it is in our duty to bear the cost of providing a better healthcare system for all our citizens. And also, when the COVID-19 vaccinations are readily available, there will be a free distribution to all our citizens equally. Also, it is very important that we ensure that our healthcare professionals are equipped with competence to deal with the various health issues and provide them with the necessary resources to support the vulnerable. Madam Speaker, we tend to brag about the youths being the future generation, and in fact we are. However, there is a blind eye when it comes to educating our youths about gender-based violence, and this poses a major threat to the future generations. So what I like about this bill, Madam Speaker, is that they have an initiative in order to give awareness and educate the public about violence against women and girls. According to the World Bank, and I quote, "Gender-based violence or violence against women and girls is a global pandemic that affects 1 in 3 women in their lifetime. This issue is not only devastating for survivors of violence and their families, but also entails a significant social and economic cost. And failure to address this issue also entails a significant cost for the future of this nation." Madam Speaker, here in Antigua, we've had so many cases that ended the lives of young women. And unfortunately, Madam Speaker, the recent one happened just only a few weeks ago. Madam Speaker, this has to stop. Although we have many laws which address gender-based violence, such as the Domestic Violence Act, the Sexual Offense Act, we are still suffering, and that is not okay. The bill will further help to facilitate the issues we are facing. Madam Speaker, as the Minister of Energy, Civil Aviation, and Transportation, my ministry is dependent on the tourism sector to thrive, Madam Speaker. Tourism is the main economic contributor to the gross domestic product. And we all know how this nation depends on the tourism sector, that we had to open our doors during a deadly crisis like the COVID-19 that's happening right now. In that being said, Madam Speaker, it is time, and I quote, to support the goals of increased economic resiliency by facilitating women's equal access to labor on the market. This bill will help to promote, and I quote, women-led businesses to engage in manufacture production of goods for export. Madam Speaker, I love to hear things like this. As the honorable member of St. Philip's North and a young aspiring woman who wants to become an entrepreneur, I also want to see my fellow constituents become self-established and get the necessary resources they need to start their ventures so that they can add value to our tourism product. Madam Speaker, in conclusion, the three ministries that the bill is looking to distribute funds to today are all interrelated and are considered the base element to fostering a more resilient economy and an equal future for all. I'll end with this quote: without a stable foundation, the building will fall. So let us strengthen the base. Let us strengthen these ministries and give them the funds that they need to do what they have to do. And let us foster equality for all. Thank you.
I acknowledge the honorable member for St. Mary's South.
Madam Speaker, I thank you for your kind acknowledgement. This bill, shortly entitled the Finance Variation of Appropriation Bill, has come to this honorable House at a time when it is most needed. When the Appropriation Act was passed earlier this year, no one could have fathomed that we would have been in this sort of circumstances. I am therefore duty-bound to support this bill as it seeks to redistribute funds where necessary in the given circumstances. It is evident that this COVID-19 pandemic has put a serious strain on many economies across the world, especially ours. Antigua and Barbuda relies heavily on the tourism industry as a source of income for the country. This might be the reason why a $42,216,589 increase was given to this industry. However, don't you think that agriculture and tourism should go hand in hand? Do you? Tourism and agriculture can go hand in hand. As we see, the fear of the COVID pandemic has increased within the nations, the use of hotels might decrease and more use of villas and condos would increase. Agriculture can come into play here in terms of we can plant our fruit trees around these villas and condos, which will attract the tourists to the uniqueness of our country. This as well could help with the hunger that we face here in the country. These fruit trees could be accessible to those vulnerable within the community, namely children and women. The tourists come to sample the uniqueness of each country. So investing in fisheries, investing in agriculture, farming production, more fruit trees, more things that are unique to us will attract them to our country and help increase the income that we so need. How can you think of agriculture and not think of health? You have to eat healthy to be healthy. But how often have you had to choose a burger over a salad because it's too expensive? The Food and Agriculture Organization has named 2021 the year of fruits and vegetables. Therefore, we need to, as a country, which will happen, go on a campaign for grow local, eat local, buy local, working along with the Ministry of Health to show persons what are the viable alternatives to produce you can eat. For example, if you're accustomed to eating broccoli, let's say, and you think that it helps with your skin, then we can look to see what an alternative produce could be within our island. For example, the running spinach that we have growing so abundantly here. In that way, the increase in the Ministry of Health, Wellness, and the Environment is supported by my ministry, and we work together to partner. Gender equality has to play some sort of role when it comes to budgets. We know that it is a social norm that the man is the head, but Madam Speaker, the woman is the neck. The man and the woman need to work together to be able to achieve the goals that we see for our country. This can be done within my ministry, with partnerships with the Ministry of Social Transformation, Human Resources Development, and Youth and Gender Affairs. Within this area, there could be development of data collection. In this way, we can rightfully state how many women are in this industry, how many men are in this industry, and compare them. We could also be able to gather data about how much our farmers produce. In this way, the issue of our income bill being reduced can come into play. This is done by knowing how much the farmers are producing and subtracting it from what we are accustomed to importing, therefore reducing the income bill.
Honorable Member, you have a minute to wrap up.
No problem, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we also have to take into consideration how technology plays a greater role in the development of agriculture. This is so by the introduction of things such as greenhouses, aquaponics, and hydroponics, my apologies, which come into play where women are able to better sustain this, youths are interested in this, and this could be taught through the Youth and Gender Affairs aspect of the Ministry of Social Transformation. In this way, we produce more and depend less on what we are importing. If it pleases you, Madam Speaker, I give my full and unequivocal support to the bill and look forward to returning to this honorable house at, a not too distant future when we can discuss channeling some funds into the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, and Barbuda Affairs. I thank you.
I acknowledge the Honorable Member for St. Paul.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity to extend my support of this bill. I rise today to commend my colleagues on taking the initiative to revise the Finance of Variation Appropriation Bill 2020. This bill will soften the total impact of this pandemic on the most disenfranchised members of our society, the women of Antigua and Barbuda. I completely agree with the decision to review this bill under a gender lens, because not only will it spark change for the future of Antigua and Barbuda, but it will create solutions for the most obvious issues affecting our women. Gender as a concept is regularly misunderstood. An understanding of gender, including gender analysis, is necessary in formulating and implementing policies and programs for achieving gender equality, including equitable social and economic developments. End of quote. This quote was stated in the Caribbean Development Bank Country Gender Assessment, Antigua and Barbuda. COVID-19 has caused a disruption of employment in many sectors of our economy, with the tourism sector being impacted the most due to restrictions in travel around the globe. With this being said, Madam Speaker, the gender gap within the tourism sector needs to be addressed. According to the briefing note from the UNDP on the economic impacts of COVID-19 and gender equality, and I quote, additionally, women are overrepresented in the sectors that have been highly affected by this crisis, such as tourism, transport, entertainment, cleaning, and remunerated domestic services, end of quote. This evidence alone is one reason why I cannot understand why the supposed leader of the opposition would even think to go against this progressive bill. As the Minister of Foreign Affairs, International Trade and Immigration, it would be my pleasure to work alongside the Ministry of Tourism and Economic Development to create training programs for competent women in Antigua and Barbuda to become diplomats and ambassadors of this country. It would be my honor, Madam Speaker and Opposition Leader, for us to join with the countries who took this progressive step in increasing the representation of women in foreign circles. To quote from Niall Burgess, Secretary General of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade of Ireland, and I quote, including more women in external relations is also important for the simple reason that the diplomatic service should look more like the people it represents, end of quote. Before this can be done, Madam Speaker, we as policymakers and the society have to change our view of diplomacy. Our society views politics, foreign affairs, and diplomatic spaces as male. As stated by Jennifer Cassidy, lecturer at the University of Oxford and former Irish diplomat at the Globus Roundtable in Dublin 2018, and I quote, women by their very nature have been perceived as ill-equipped for diplomatic careers. The ideal promoted by diplomatic institutions are associated with the Western male. A successful diplomat should be rational, strong, tall, and polite. It is not enough just to increase the number of female diplomats. It is necessary to reconstruct the perceived image of what a successful diplomat is and should be. With this being said, Madam Speaker, an opposition to this bill is blatantly sexist and goes against the very reason why you elected to represent this great house in the first place. Honorable colleagues, a study done by the International Organization of Migration on the migration in the Caribbean, current trends, opportunities and challenges, 2013 has shown that there are 28,733 registered immigrants and 35,578 registered emigrants in Antigua and Barbuda. Antigua and Barbuda is a popular destination country for Caribbean nationals who fill up labor gaps created by the emigration of highly educated nationals. Therefore, the labor force in Antigua and Barbuda is inferred to be made up of many immigrants, and the study has clearly revealed that immigrants were predominantly female. The feminization of the immigrant population serves as a stimulus for female empowerment and also helps us sustain the migration ring through social networking. Due to the crisis, we will now see a rise in unemployment of immigrants. And because they are necessary to our workforce, there must be a diversification of our economy, Madam Speaker. No longer can we rely solely on tourism to provide majority of our employment. Madam Speaker, we must now look to agro-processing, the field of information technology, and the exploration of artisan markets within our region. To conclude, Madam Speaker, this bill will serve to empower women in Antigua and Barbuda, whether national or non-national, through the education, opportunities, and reform of society. There will be no stopping the great turn of the tide for women in Antigua and Barbuda. I leave you with this quote from the article on advancing the economic empowerment and autonomy of women in the Caribbean, and I quote, "A woman is economically powered and autonomous when she both has the ability to succeed and advance economically and the power to make and act on economic decisions." To oppose this bill is to oppose the empowerment and progression of women in Antigua. It is also an act of discrimination in and of itself. So, honorable opposition, I beg of you, rethink your stance. If not for the country, then for your own self-image. I thank you.
I acknowledge the honorable member for St. John's Rural South.
Madam Speaker, allow me to begin by commending the Finance Variation Appropriation Bill of 2020 as an effective move in dealing with the impacts that COVID-19 has had upon the society, and more importantly, dealing with these impacts through a gender lens. Its importance is reflected through the need for new approaches in dealing with issues such as mental health, gender-based violence, and economic resiliency, especially as it relates to the women of our society. Madam Speaker, let me place this into perspective. The World Health Organization has said that depressive disorders stood at 49.1% among women, compared to 29.3% among men. The Pan-American Health Organization has said that COVID-19 has generated high levels of anxiety and stress among women. 80% of 50 million persons, 80% of 50 million persons who are affected by violent conflicts and disasters are women and children. Now, in no way am I belittling the impact that COVID-19 has had upon other groups within the society, like our men. But what I and my fellow members of government would like to see, especially through this bill that we seek to pass today, is that all persons within society benefit, irregardless of their gender, irregardless of their age, irregardless of their class, and irregardless of their ability. Now, what more is to be said is that ministries do not work in a vacuum. And so if the ministries of health, social transformation, and tourism and economic development are allocated these funds, my ministry, the Ministry of Culture, Sports, and National Festivals, will work alongside these ministries so that we can see policies being implemented effectively. So, for example, as the focus narrows in on mental health and gender-based violence, what my ministry will expect is an increase in sporting activities. This is so as the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund has said that sports are not only essential to the development of physical health, but that of mental health and social inclusion. This means that if there's a space where youth, women, men, able-bodied and disabled persons can release emotions such as aggression and stress, we expect to see some level of impact as it relates to mental health issues. Or where persons are involved in activities that encourage team cooperation among all individuals, we expect to see some level of respect emerging that is necessary in dealing with gender-based violence. To this effect, Madam Speaker, my ministry seeks to develop sportive facilities and not only focusing on the accessibility of these sportive facilities, but ensuring that all persons who wish to participate can do so on an equal footing. For instance, a 2019 article by The Guardian has said that one of the challenges women faced within the sports arena was the sportive facilities. Let's take, for example, the changing rooms that we all can agree are more suited towards men and their needs than women and our needs. Or let's look at female-dominated sports and how they have been placed on the back burner while male-dominated sports are left to thrive. What my ministry will seek to do is to implement funds into the female-dominated sports so that they can be put on the same competitive footing as male-dominated sports. Madam Speaker, what we want is that activities, facilities, and equipment ensure that all persons are able to participate on an equal footing. Madam Speaker, this is just one of the very few ways in which my ministry will work along with the ministries of health, social transformation, and tourism and economic development in ensuring that policies are implemented successfully. It would be foolish to oppose this bill, as the benefits that can reach out of this proposed bill are far-reaching. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I acknowledge the Honourable Member for St. John's Rural East.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I would like to adopt all protocol already established. Madam Speaker, this morning I am tasked with my presentation on the Finance Variation of Appropriation Bill 2020 on behalf of the people of St. John's Rural East and as the Minister responsible for Housing, Lands and Urban Renewal and the Minister of State in the Ministry of Legal Affairs, Public Safety and Labour. I am here to debate this bill in favor of my government, which seeks to distribute public funds to various offices and ministries in order to ensure gender-responsive budgeting in Antigua and Barbuda. However, this move will decrease monies towards the Ministry of Legal Affairs, Public Safety, and the Ministry of Labor. Madam Speaker, I argue that the Ministry of Social Transformation, which encompasses the Department of Youth Affairs, the Directorate of Gender Affairs, and the Department of Family Services, have not been receiving sufficient funding for many years due to lack of consideration of how much gender impacts our daily lives. As the Minister of Public Safety, it is crucial that the administration, specifically my ministry, supports the efforts of creating a gender-sensitive budget to ensure the safety of girls and women. The bill should not cause an uproar. Crime will not get out of hand because of a reduction in funds this fiscal year. What will happen, though, is a strengthening of consistent legal framework via policies that protect the health and safety of women, which could now be considered from a gendered approach. Additionally, I should consider the viewpoint that our local magistrate courts and high court would ordinarily need financing available to ensure a smooth and timely delivery of justice. Furthermore, Madam Speaker, there has been an outcry from our country's youth on social media to aggressively address crimes of a sexual nature which are considered gruesome and heinous. Notwithstanding this, Madam Speaker, 2020 is not an ordinary year, as a significant proportion of funds allocated towards strengthening our justice system have gone unused due to the COVID-19 pandemic that has affected the entire world. This pandemic has negatively affected girls and women, as COVID-19 measures such as a lockdown and a curfew have caused a sharp increase in domestic violence and sexual violence statistics during these times of unemployment and uncertainty. There is no other way for our women and children to escape these brutal and life-threatening circumstances unless our administration increases funding to end gender-based violence here in Antigua and Barbuda. Honorable Member, that is the leader of the opposition, how dare you insinuate that funds do not need to be reappropriated from women, if I may add, make up the largest proportion of labor in the hotel sector who stand unemployed and face the most risk due to COVID-19. And this is according to our Statistical Visions Department website. Madam Speaker, this action of reallocating funds will increase the number of security of shelters which house and facilitate victims of domestic violence and sexual violence, including assault and rape. It will increase the mental health support to these survivors, which is critical but often overlooked. Under these gender-based approaches, I am committed to assuring the women of St. John's Rural East that help is on the way once this bill has been passed. No longer will the women of my constituency have to live in fear of their spouses and partners and subject themselves to intimate partner violence. This bill will not take away from housing and development, but rather, it will add to the quality of life for women and girls across the nation. Our plans at the Ministry of Legal Affairs will simply continue in the 2021 fiscal year when this Honorable House meets again. Madam Speaker, the Finance Variation of Appropriation Bill 2020 seeks to increase the economic resilience by providing access to women to expand their small businesses, giving access to government grants and loans, and extending training opportunities for various fields. As well, the administration is proposing that funds be reallocated to tackle sexual harassment in the workplace by introducing protocols which protect women with a safe work culture and ensuring investigation of victimization claims if such matters are reported. This will be done through policy, and as the Minister of Labor, I gladly welcome such an important move by the government, as usually the ministry is responsible for training opportunities to the socioeconomically disenfranchised. Madam Speaker, it is women who are most at risk of sexual harassment. it is women who are most at risk of losing their job if sexual advances by superiors or even their co-workers are rejected. In our fast-paced destination towards entrepreneurship, this bill provides women with great opportunities to create their own startups, increase the size of their already established business to create additional revenue, and provide women with more knowledge and more skills to make them even more valuable assets in the workplace. For women who may be more comfortable in a secure job through employment, this bill will give birth to a shift in our nation, where our women will not be afraid of having autonomy over their bodies and standing up for themselves in the face of sexual harassment. Under my government, gender-based violence, inclusive of domestic violence, sexual violence, and sexual harassment in the workplace will be phased out with immediate effect through the budget. I thank you.
I acknowledge the honourable member for St. Philip's South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the acknowledgement. Ministers and opposition colleagues, violence against women continues to be an epidemic globally and across the Caribbean, spreading from trafficking, rape, intimate partner violence, and sexual harassment. We hear stories daily about the abuse that women and girls face, violation of their human rights, and I'm going to read something from His Excellency, Dr. Edwin Cudgington, who was the then Secretary General of CARICOM in 2005, and he said, persistent stereotypical attitude towards women continues to pose a challenge to achieving gender equality in the Caribbean. The stresses and vulnerabilities faced by women as a result of HIV, the persistent scourge of violence against women, the risk associated with the pursuit of transactional sex, and the plague of gender-related poverty are some of the prevalent social issues that negatively impact on the quality of life for women of the region. Insufficient access to or control of economic resources and continuous low level of participation in the decision-making processes, including representations in the government, continue to hamper women advancement, and in so doing would have implications for the community's development. Therefore, I do agree with the finance variation of the Appropriation Bill 2020. Who knows, maybe when we educate and offer counseling for our young people today, then this will reduce violence, rape, and other harmful threats against us women. The more I've spoken about feminism, the more I've realized that fighting for women's rights has too often become anonymous with man-hating. Emma Watson quoted in speech on gender equality. Gender equality is not only a pressing moral and social issue, but also a critical economic challenge that we women face every day. Our issues and our conversations have become issues for men. I get angry when I think about it. No woman should sit down and allow a man to speak about her reproductive rights. Consider the facts. There are 655 million fewer women in the labor force than men. Women spend 3 times the amount of time as men on unpaid care work in the home. 195 million fewer women than men are literate, and 190 million fewer women than men have a bank account. The Ministry of Works and the Minister of State in the Ministry of Finance and Corporate Governance are working towards all forms of gender equality that this bill will offer. Also, as a member of St. Philip's South, I have considered the recognition towards women in Antigua and Barbuda who are disabled. This development efforts must, at the very least, bring a focus to the multidimensional discrimination that disabled women face. It is very widely acknowledged that women, men, girls, and boys with disabilities face discrimination in education, employment, and basic services, and it also acknowledged that women with disabilities face multiple discrimination on the basis of having a disability and being a woman or girl. Yet, more often than not, women and girls with disabilities are not visible within development programs focused on disability inclusion of gender equality. My ministry has a key role in creating opportunities for women and girls with disabilities to fulfill their full potential. We plan to end discrimination against all women and girls in Antigua and Barbuda by eliminating all forms of violence and harmful practices against all women, recognize and value unpaid care work, reform legislative and policy blocks that prevent women having equal rights to economic resources, ensure universal access to sexual and reproductive health and reproductive rights. In order for this to become successful, this means our first step is to reach over the walls that separate people based on different identities and viewing different perspectives through different lenses. By applying a gender lens to disability inclusive development, which will increase awareness about how development programs and projects that can impact women, men, girls, and boys with disabilities here in Antigua and Barbuda. The challenge of attaining gender parity is highly complex and cannot be solved only by my ministry alone. The private sectors need to play its full part in maximizing work opportunities, not only for women, but also to our disabled women. We need to shift attitudes that hold all women back in our society. Madam Speaker, let us all stand as strong, independent, smart women and fight against gender equality in Antigua and Barbuda. I thank you.
I acknowledge the Honourable Member for St. Peter.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for my opportunity to speak. As a member of the House of Representatives, I agree with the 2020 Finance Bill. The decisions we make and the policies we create impact us all. Therefore, it is important for us to focus on the development of Antigua and Barbuda, which is indeed necessary during these unpredictable times with the COVID-19 pandemic. The budget reflects our decisions to tax and spend, to borrow and lend, and to consume and invest, which ensures that we will always have enough money for the things we need and the things that are important. Madam Speaker, it is important that we do not overlook the economic impact of COVID-19 resulting from the widespread closure of businesses and industries. This put us at a standstill as a nation. Between April and June 2020, the International Labour Organization estimated that an equivalent of 400 million full-time jobs were lost across the world, and that income earned by workers globally fell 10% in the first 9 months of 2020, equivalent to a loss of US 3.5 trillion. Madam Speaker, with the reallocation of these funds in the total amount of $72,265,719, my constituency and the people of Antigua and Barbuda will benefit greatly as we ourselves have suffered the hard blow the pandemic brought upon us. However, my colleagues and I are not saying that all ministries aren't important, but at a time like this, it is our major concern of the overall well-being of our people and the development of our country. With the decrease of jobs, especially for women, this can cause an increase in gender-based violence such as sexual, physical, economic, and psychological harm. OAS, Violence Against Women, states evidence that the hotlines that offer specific attention and counseling in case of violence has increased up to 80%. Madam Speaker, I understand the concern the opposition has, but the bill wouldn't have been proposed if it wasn't feasible. Additionally, the pandemic puts a strain on communities, particularly in segments that are already vulnerable. Women disproportionately work in insecure, low-paid, part-time, and informal employment with little or no income security and social protection, such as health insurance, and are therefore less protected from economic recession and times of crisis. Madam Speaker, in Antigua and Barbuda, too often we hear stories of single parents, especially single mothers, living in poverty, where we must also try to combat substance abuse, which could be a result from the unemployment and the stress levels that arise, especially with so many jobs dependent on tourism. An increase in funds gives us an opportunity to aid and implement such strategies such as access to mental health and wellness support, suicide prevention services, and it is important that we continue to provide health supplies, whether it be masks, ventilators, and other necessary equipment. May I draw to your attention, Madam Speaker, that our revenues fell 60% at one point during COVID, hence why I mentioned before that we must prioritize. Once again, the reallocation allows us to focus on the well-being of our country, in which working together will embrace change and deliver prosperity for all. A journey of 1,000 starts with one step. Therefore, I say to you that our future depends on openness and investment. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for listening to my contribution.
Madam Prime Minister, do you wish to wrap up?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, to wrap up this discussion, the members of my government have so graciously, in detail, laid before this honorable House the reasons and supporting documentation as to why we know moving forward with this bill would be for the best of our people in this nation. Now, the Leader of the Opposition has spoken to the quantity of funds being allocated to the Ministry of Tourism, which she in fact pointed out is our main industry. This realization should have then made it clear as to why great support is needed for this ministry, and this reallocation may allow for innovation in our approach to the ministry in combating similar issues in the future. Now, outside of these walls, we're all friends. But here, in these honorable walls, as the Prime Minister, the interest of the people is my utmost priority. Now, the Leader of the Opposition, Madam Speaker, would have spoken to living in male-dominated societies and single-parent-headed households who do not know where their next meal is going to come from. Madam Speaker, these are the very inequalities we are seeking to address. The Leader of the Opposition, to the Leader of the Opposition, we say we seek to move forward swiftly with this bill to do justice by
Member, your mic.
the Leader of the Ministry of Health, Wellness, and the Environment. Madam Speaker, I'm not certain if we were not clear, but this is exactly what we are proposing. If you were as attentive as we would have hoped, Leader of the Opposition, you would have realized that we have strategically addressed these issues. Again, we rest sound in our stance to move forward with the proposed amendments to this bill as we seek to make Antigua and Barbuda a more gender-conscious and progressive nation. If it pleases you, Madam Speaker.
It has been moved and seconded that a bill shortly entitled the Finance Variation of Appropriation Bill 2020 be read a second time. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. The bill will now be read a second time. Madam Clerk.
An act to vary the appropriation of the sum, the issue of which was authorized by the Appropriation Act 2020.
The bill now stands referred to a committee of the whole House to be considered clause by clause. The House will now resume its sitting. I acknowledge the Honourable Member for St. John's City West.
Madam Speaker,
I am pleased to report that the bill, shortly entitled the Finance Variation of Appropriation Bill 2020, has passed through the committee stage with sundry amendments. I move the adoption of the report of the committee on the bill.
I acknowledge the honourable member for St. John's City South.
Madam Speaker, I beg to second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded that the report of the committee on the bill be adopted. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. I acknowledge the honourable member for St. John's City West.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that the bill, shortly entitled the Finance Variation of Appropriation Bill 2020, be read a third time and passed.
I acknowledge the honourable member for St. John's City South.
Madam Speaker, I beg to second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled the Finance Variation of Appropriation Bill 2020 be read a third time and passed. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. The bill will now be read a third time. Madam Clerk.
An act to vary the appropriation of the sum, the issue of which is authorized by the Appropriation Act 2020.
The bill has been read a third time and passed accordingly. I entertain the motion for adjournment. I acknowledge the honourable member for St. John's City West.
Madam Speaker, I move that this honourable House be adjourned sine die.
I acknowledge the honourable member for St. John's City South.
Madam Speaker, I would like to second the motion of adjournment.
It has been moved and seconded that this House stands adjourned sine die. Those in favor say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. This House stands adjourned sine die.
Thank you.